Welcome everyone to our February SASA Story Night 2023. Pretty amazing to see each and every one of you here tonight, and boy, are you in for a real treat. We have several tellers who want to tell, but we also have our featured teller tonight. I asked Judi Tarowsky to be our featured teller because I actually have heard all of her stories for the last year or so through Zoom. I'm so fortunate to get to know Judi now that I can call her my friend. But just this past month, Judi told the most amazing tale, and it runs over 8 minutes, but you won't even know it because this story will be held in your mind way past the moment she ends the story. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Judi Tarowsky from West Virginia, telling a mystical, magical tale. Judi, you are on stage.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. You are so kind, and it's always a warm Texas welcome. The story is The Lady of Phelan Wern Mill Pond, and it was originally collected by a Welsh storyteller and folklorist by the name of Myra Evans. And storyteller and illustrator Peter Stevenson has collected Myra's stories, and this is where I got this particular story from Peter, and I tell it with his gracious permission. In the west of Wales, in the region that we would call the Cardigan area, there was an old farmhouse, and next to it was a mill and a mill pond. And in the farmhouse, there lived a miller, his wife, and their son Moses. Now, Moses was a handsome lad. He knew it. He had curly black hair. He had dark, soulful eyes and a ruddy complexion. And whenever the girls and the young women in the area saw Moses, they would giggle and blush. Moses worked hard for his father in the mill. He ground the grain and he oiled that great wheel. And every night after work, he would walk along the edge of the mill pond and absolutely enchant the foxes and the toads that lived in the dry stone wall there. One warm moonlit night, Moses left the mill and he was walking along the wall around the mill pond when on the other side of the mill pond, he saw sitting on the wall on the side opposite the road, a figure. It was a woman. He didn't recognize her. She was a stranger. He would have known if it was one of the local girls. So he called out to her, "Beautiful moon tonight." She ignored him. Well, Moses wasn't used to this, so he tried again. "Don't fall in, that pond is deep." And she still stared into the mill pond. Moses tried again. "You look like you might be lost. May I be of service? What's your name?" And she finally answered, "My name is of little importance. Find my sandals." That was all Moses had to hear. He scurried around the edge of that pond up to her side, and when he stood before her, his heart was gone. Oh, it was absolutely gone. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She had hair the color of ripe, sweet corn, and her eyes were the color of grass after a spring rain. And then he remembered her sandals. Then he was down on his hands and his knees in the mud and the brambles, scratching himself, searching, till finally she said, "I have my sandals. Thank you." And she vanished. Moses searched for her, called after her, and cursed her. He knew he was living in a fairy tale. Moses went to his mother for advice because he wasn't used to being ignored like this by young women. "Moses," she said, "she's Tilwith Teg. Leave her be. She's trouble." "Now, why don't you find a nice plain local girl, not too pretty? A pretty girl will, well, she'll break your heart, but a plain girl will bake you a nice fairy cake." Moses ignored his mother. And every night after work, he would walk around the edge of the mill pond searching for her. Until finally, during the next full moon, there she was, silhouetted against the moonlight. She was holding a bulrush, the wand of the fairies, and she was standing in the middle of the mill pond, up to her knees in the water. "Come here, you'll drown," he called to her. "It's the night before summer. Here I'll stay," she said. But Moses was not going to be put off. His heart was churning in his chest. So he said, "Why did you disappear? Where did you go? Can I come with you? What's your name? And how can you be standing in water 30 feet up to your knees?" "My name is beneath the water and is of little importance," she said. "All right," Moses said, "I'll call you Cereal. It means cheerful. Do you like it? Now you have a name and you have my heart. I think of none but you." She looked at him and said, "I'm not from here. I'm not like you. You cannot own me." "Oh, but I want to be with you," Moses said. "I love you. I will die if I can't be with you. I will marry you. I will marry you." "It would be better if you did not," she said. "You would never see your family again. No sacrifice is worth that." And she vanished. "Oh, don't do that," Moses says. "Please don't go away. Please come back. No, I want to marry you. I will be here. I will be here next moonlight. I will make sacrifices." And he barked like a fox. Moses went to his mother again for advice. "Moses, you numbskull, she's a fairy. Leave her be. She'll either take you away and we'll never see you again, or she'll stay here and be miserable and turn us all into toads." "Now, Moses, what about Karis, the nice girl who lives down the lane? She can bake you a nice fairy cake." But Moses ignored his mother. And the next full moon, he was back at the mill pond. He was stalking it like a fox, hunched shoulders, yellow eyes. And when she appeared, she rose out of the water, dripping with snails and pondweed. He begged her to take him with her, begged her to marry him, said he would die if he could not be with her. "I shall ask my father," she said, and vanished. Moses threw back his head and howled. The next full moon, Moses was there at the mill pond. His hair had grown out. It was unkempt and unruly. His beard was unshaven. He looked like a wild animal. And when she appeared, he leapt at her. But she stopped him in his tracks with one glance from those green eyes. "My father has spoken," she said. "You will stay with me in my world for 6 months, and you will come back here in 6 months and you're home. And after a year, you will know your heart." "I know my heart," Moses said. "I want to marry you. I want to be with you." But all she said was, "The corn is sown." Then she stepped out of the water and stepped into a circle of grass greener than the rest. She told Moses to stand there with her. She stamped her right foot 3 times, and Moses found himself surrounded by Tilwith Teg. There was a mist. There was no day, no night, no clocks, no time, no anger, no joy, no sorrow. There was really no language to describe what he was experiencing. He was with the girl. And then her father was there saying that the 6 months were over and he was to return to his home and think about his daughter. Moses fell into a swoon, and when he woke, he was lying in the grass next to the mill pond. He really had no memory of what had happened, except he knew he would have to return to Cereal's world in 6 months, and that saddened him. But then he felt every emotion he had ever had. He went to see his parents, who thought he'd been gone only a few minutes, and they were sad to learn that he would be leaving them forever. if they could see his heart was true. Moses returned to the mill and worked for his father. He worked very hard. He ground the grain. He oiled that great wheel. But he had a sense of serenity he had not known in a long time. All that wildness in him was gone. And then Siriel appeared. And Moses was weeping because he knew he'd be leaving his family forever. And even though he didn't say a word, he told her that he would be coming with her. She smiled and kissed away his tears. She said, "There's no need. I'm staying here with you. My father sends 7 white cows as my dowry for your family. They will give you milk, cream, rich butter, and cheese beyond your wildest imagination. But there is a price. On May Day Eve, I'll return to my world for one day. And you are not to question me about it, not ever. Do you understand?" And Moses agreed. They went to see his parents, who were overjoyed to learn that Moses would not be leaving them. They had a great celebration, and Moses and Siriel were married. And very soon, 7 white cows arrived and began flirting with the Welsh blacks. And within a year, each of those cows had given birth to a white calf. And Siriel had given birth to a son with eyes as green as the sea. And on May Day Eve, she vanished and returned the next day. This went on for 7 years and 7 sons. And although Moses was growing a bit older and slower, Siriel never changed from the day he had first met her. She worked hard and cared for her boys lovingly. Although some said she was an enchantress. She called a disagreeable old man a humpback, and a hump appeared in his back where there had been none. And some said she turned little boys into toads, and that year the mill pond was frothing with toads. But as time went on, Moses grew weaker and feeble and blind. And one day he died. And after the funeral, Siriel called her sons to her together. She kissed them and said she was going back to her world. But she told them she would always love them and she would always be watching out for them. And then she said, "Find a plain girl. Stay away from a pretty one, because pretty girls will bring you nothing but trouble." And then she vanished. The end.
Oh, that was beautifully told. Thank you so much for weaving that tale for all of us tonight, Judi.
Thank you,
As I
Sue. Thank you.
told you, you guys will not forget this story, will you? I'm sorry, Judi, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. But thank you. Thank you. It's a favorite. I love Wales. I've been there. I have Welsh blood in me, and I just love the stories from there.
Ah, I'm drawn to that story, and there is some Welsh blood in me too. So now you have drawn me to even more. Thank you for letting us know the origin, and we just loved your version of telling that tale. So thank you so much. And thank you
Thank
to all of you for listening. And we have our next teller up. Beverly Schwartz is joining us. She's been with us once before, but she asked if she could tell early, so I have a feeling she has somewhere to go after now. And she has also a touching story, it sounds like. So we're looking forward to hearing you, Beverly. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, everyone? You can hear me? Okay. The name of the story is Saved by a Pendant. It was a bright sunny morning, and the Polish village people went to the train station and stood there silently. The train came rolling in and stopped with a sudden jolt. The captain of the Nazis army was there. "Soldiers, open the doors of the trains." And they opened up the train, and the bright sunlight hit the men, women, and children in the trains, and they stepped out onto the platform. Jews, start walking towards the gate. Drop everything you have in your hands. You will not need them. He hit his palm with the baton, and then he turned around to the Polish people, standing and watching and staring at him. And he said, these people won't need any of their stuff where they're going. Take whatever you want. Jews, keep walking towards the gate. And the very last car in the back of it were two women from the Polish village. They saw a woman come out of the last car, the beautiful fur coat, and it looked very heavy. One said to the other, let's go for her coat. And the two of them said, now, because they didn't want anyone else trying to grab that coat off that woman's back. And they ran and they pushed her down on the ground and whipped that coat off of her back and ran as fast as they could to the nearest field. And as one of the women ran, she kind of looked back, and out of the corner of her eye saw this horrified face on the woman that had gotten up and turned around and was staring at them as they ran to the field. Oh, they put that coat down on the field, and they knew that there was probably hidden treasure in the coats like they had found before in other people that had come by train there. They found beautiful jewelry and gold and necklaces, and they found all other beautiful stuff that she had hidden in the coat. Jackpot, they said. And then one of the women held up the coat. This is lopsided. This side is heavier than the other. There's something in this coat. There must be a hidden pocket. The woman put her hands in. I found it. I found it. And she went to pull it out, and it was an infant, a baby girl in the pocket. The woman took it to her chest and carefully rocked it, and the baby stopped crying and started gurgling and smiling at the woman holding her. The other woman was in shock, watching what was happening. And she said to the woman, I have my treasure. My husband and I have always wanted a child, and we've never been able to have one. I'm going to take this baby, and I'm going to take it home, and I hope my husband will help me raise her. You take the coat. You take all the jewels. I have my jewel now in my arms. And the woman went home, and her husband was ecstatic too. He wanted the child, and they raised this child with love and caring, and she had everything she wanted. She was an excellent student, and she went to college, and after college she decided she wanted to be a pediatrician. She went to medical school, and when she graduated, she worked in the Polish village in the hospital there. And many years went by, and her life was just beautiful. Well, many years after that, her mother passed away. And Shana, that was the name that they gave her, which means pretty little one, was sitting there receiving people at her house because they were friends of her mother. And she thought it was all done, and she went to lock the door, and oh, someone's there. And she looked out the window and said, oh, I know, it's my mother's best friend. I thought she had already been here. She opened the door, and they hugged and kissed. And she said, Shana, I need to sit down and talk to you. Your mother wanted me to tell you a story after she passed away. Well, she sat down and told the story of how they found her. I don't believe you. My parents wouldn't do something like that. My mother wouldn't do that. Your mother said you'd say that. Show me where her jewelry chest is. Excuse me. And I'm sorry. And in that jewelry chest, you will find a pendant with Jewish words on the back of it. You were wearing it the day we found you. So she said, take me to the jewelry chest. And they walked in, and there in the jewelry chest was a beautiful necklace with a pendant on the end. And she looked at the back and she saw Hebrew letters that was on the back, probably her name, she thought. And then she finally said, okay, I believe you now. Well, the girl, Shana, really didn't think much about it afterwards. And she wore that necklace. The next day, she had made it larger, so she'd always have it as a symbol of where her past was from. But she never thought much about it after that. And one day, she went on vacation in a town in one of the other countries nearby. And she saw some Jewish boys at the corner. Shabbos candles, candlestick holders, buy them for the Shabbos. And she went up to these two boys. And she said, I have a story to tell you. Maybe you can help me. And she told the story of the pendant. Said, do you know what those Hebrew letters read? Maybe I can find out what my real name is. And they said, no, but here's the rabbi and his address. Write him a letter. Maybe he can help you. So that afternoon, when she went to the hotel, she wrote the letter and sent it back in the mail to the rabbi. And a few days later, she got a response. I cannot really tell you much about maybe your family and your name, but it is Hebrew letters and probably your name, and you are probably Jewish. I would go to Israel, to the court of rabbis, where they know where some of the people survived and some who did not. Maybe they will be able to find your past. And she thought about it, and why not? So she took a trip to Israel, and she went to the court, and they couldn't find any of ways of finding her family, even looking at the pendant. But this was her Jewish name, and they told her it. And they said, while you're here, stay in our country in Israel for a while. Our hospitals are in desperate need of physicians, especially pediatricians. Won't you stay a while, and we'll help get you a job? And maybe you might know something, a miracle might happen while you're here. And so she did. She went to Jerusalem and found a job as a pediatrician. And she loved the hospital and the people and the culture of Israel. And then she met the love of her life and married a young man. And they had kids and raised their family. And she had a very happy life in Jerusalem. Now, she was almost about 60 by then. And all of a sudden, boom, there was a big explosion in a cafe in Jerusalem. Many people were injured, and they were being treated at her hospital. She had walked out of one of the booths after treating a child and was standing there as a man, old man with a cane and a long beard, came in. My granddaughter's been hurt. Help me find her, please help me find my granddaughter. And the woman came up to her, and she put his hand on his shoulder. Tell me, I've been treating many children right now from the accident, and tell me what she looks like. Maybe I can know where she is and lead you to her. He explained what she was wearing, and she has a beautiful gold pendant around her necklace. Okay, so they went from place to place. Finally, they found her. And what a reunion. He went, and they kissed, and they hugged, and they cried. And when they finally calmed down a little, they both looked at the pediatrician. Shane was still standing there, frozen, looking white as a ghost. And she said to them, where did you get that pendant? Where did you buy it? And the old man said, you can't buy something like that. I was a jeweler, and I made 2 identical pendants, one for each of my daughters. One daughter survived, and this is her daughter, her granddaughter. She gave her, Shana, to his other daughters, gave the necklace to her daughter on her 16th birthday. My other daughter did not survive the concentration camp, nor did my wife. Slowly, she brought out her pendant. and put it on her blouse. Everyone stared at the pendant. Then everyone looked back at the granddaughter's pendant. They were frozen in time. And then the daughter reached out and put her hands on the old man's shoulders and looked him straight in the eyes. I am your daughter, and you are my father. Thank you. Sorry about coughing.
Oh no, that happens to all of us. That was very touching. Oh my gosh. True story?
True story. It comes from, let's see, I might have a book around here, the Heroes of Faith by Rabbi David Hoffman. And it's about stories that will warm your heart. And they're all Holocaust stories, but they're positive ones.
Yeah. Oh no, I lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on. Let's see, it's 7:30, so I want to make sure that we fit in as many folks as possible. Our next teller comes from Justin, Texas. We love it when Elizabeth joins us. She has fabulous personal tales and folk tales. She is a retired librarian and has worked with young kids and puppets, and she is amazing. We love having her. Without further ado, Elizabeth.
I guess I shouldn't clap for myself. Woo! The word on the street was she was easy. That's what George told his big brother. The year was 1946. And he said, you should call her. And so Robert said, well, maybe I will. So a few days later, he got the number from George and called this young lady. And when the phone rang, the father answered, and he said, Mr. Sloat, I was wondering if Ellie was there. He said, who's calling? I'm Robert Cardiff. I'm George's big brother. And he said, yes, I'll call her. So he called his daughter, Ellie, and Ellie came, and she was 16. And the conversation went, hey, Ellie, this is Robert, George's big brother. I was wondering if you'd like to go out and eat sometime. She goes, well, I don't know. I'll have to ask my parents, because she was 16. And she asked her parents, and they said, well, if you want to go, that's okay. So Robert and his brother James had just built a jalopy. So on Saturday, he came over and picked her up. And they were going, and he said, what kind of beer do you like to drink? And she said, oh, I love root beer. He went, root beer? He said, and he turned the wheel and started another direction. He said, why don't we go and try the new A&W drive-in? They have car hops, and I heard they serve great root beer. And she said, oh, I love that. So they had their meal, they watched the car hops, they were having a nice conversation, and then he took her out into the country, and he was just all hands, and she soundly rebuffed him, and he took her straight home. Well, fast forward 1949. Ellie has now graduated from high school, and she is going to attend Southwestern College in Georgetown, Texas. And so she went there, and she was going to major in home economics. And she was there for a semester, and she got to come home the first time at Thanksgiving. And when she came home, her mama asked her, Ellie, could you please take your grandfather to the barber shop, because your grandfather really needs a haircut and I've not had time. She goes, sure. Now, back in the day, you would dress when you went out. So here she was, 19 years old. She had gloves on. She had a matching hat. She had an outfit. And when she walked into the barber shop, all the men noticed. And one man in particular sat up, being shaved at the moment, saying, oh my, where have you been all my life? She just thought that was ridiculous. So after her grandfather got a haircut, she left. Well, It wasn't but a few days, and the phone rang at Ellie's house. And the mom answered this time. Hello? Hi, Mrs. Sloat. This is Robert Cardiff. I was wondering if Ellie's in. Yes, she is. Ellie. And so, sure enough, she went and came in. Hello? And he said, hey, Ellie, this is Robert Cardiff. I saw you at the barbershop the other day. I was wondering if you might consider going out with me for a meal. And I promise like nothing like before will happen. And she goes, well, I think I'd like that. So they went out for a meal. They had a nice time. And then she went after college. Well, Robert was also going to college. He was going to the University of Houston. And he was taking a class in diesel mechanics. And so one of the things he could do as a side job was he picked up a job to drive nursing students up to Georgetown to take classes. So he would call Ellie. It was about once a month. So he would call Ellie and he would say, Ellie, I'm coming to Georgetown. Would you like to go out? And she said, I'd love to. So he would drive those nursing students up. He said it was very embarrassing. They were they just teased him. He was very handsome. He was tall, had dark hair and blue eyes. Wow. So he would drive those nursing students up there, drop them at their class, and then go by her dorm, pick her up and take her on a picnic or a movie. And she always said that was so much fun to be in a bus going to the movies. So that summer, when she came home from college, Robert had bought a ring, and he went to Mr. Sloat, her daddy, and said, Mr. Sloat, I'd really like to marry your daughter. May I ask her? Now, he was really nervous because he was from the wrong side of the tracks. She was from the Memorial Oaks area, which was very upscale, even back then, and he was only a farm boy. But Mr. Sloat said, I think you should ask her. So he asked her. She was thrilled. Yes, yes, yes. And so on February the 27th, 1951, they got married. And in August, they moved to Edna, Texas, about 60 miles from Houston. And he was a mechanic for big, heavy equipment, farm equipment. And his daddy asked him at a family gathering in August, hey, Robert, would you consider going to work for me? I really need a mechanic. And I know you've learned that. And his father, Vic Sr., was a rice farmer. And so Robert and Ellie talked it over. And they said, yeah, I think that'd be really good. We'd be closer to family. And so they moved to the small farming community of Katy, Texas, where it was only a few miles to the farm. And so in October the 29th, 1951, Eleanor Elizabeth Cardiff was born. And I love to share that memory that my mother told me so many years ago. Thank you.
That is lovely. Oh my goodness. That just touches the heart and makes us all smile. And I wanted to sing A&W root beer's got that frosty mug taste. A&W, oh my gosh, I was right there with you.
Thank you,
the
Sue.
entire family. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And that was okay for the family. The first part, the word on the street was.
Oh, that was perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
I got a little nervous when we were talking family.
You know, I was doing that for all those bombers. So no, we're all good. We're all good.
Okay. And that was exactly 9 months from when they got married. I was born.
I love that.
And I have the telegram that they sent to my grandmother in Philadelphia because I was her first grandchild.
Oh my gosh, you are so fortunate. Oh my word. So we call you Elizabeth. Is that?
Thank you for letting me tell.
Oh, of course. So is Elizabeth your chosen name that you would like us to call you, or?
I'm a third generation Eleanor, so yes, they called me Elizabeth because that was confusing. Eleanor Ann, and then Elizabeth. Yes.
And
Thank
yet
you.
we now know you come from a line of famous Eleanors, and you fit right in there with them. So
Thank you very much.
all right, our next teller is Jamie Blount, and Jamie joins us each month, usually telling personal tales, but Jamie, we're ready to be surprised if you're going to be telling a different type of a tale, but how about some hands for Jamie? So just unmute, Jamie.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, yeah. This is a personal story, if you will. I've noticed many, many times that in any organization, especially a big organization, you have a flow chart of people who have responsibility, going from the boss at the top on down the line to the others who have their jobs to do. And I've noticed also that there is also an unofficial way people have of running organizations as well. Not everybody who has responsibility and know-how is on that flow chart. So often there are people who have other jobs that are seemingly not as important, but who really get the job done, perhaps more so than the people who are on the flow chart. I guess the best example I can give you is I was in the hospital a few years ago here in North Carolina. I had a knee replacement. And though my surgeon was a very good surgeon and took good care of me, I got the feeling that the people who really ran the hospital where I was, those people were the nurses that ran the hospital. So if I needed something, I didn't go to my surgeon, I went to the nurses. They had a very, very good feel for what was going on there. So when I left, I tried to find the nurse who had really given me an enormous amount of help, and I couldn't get a hold of her. She was off that day and off the next day. So I couldn't really go to her. But anyway, my dad played a role similar to the one that I just described. My dad worked for the FBI. He was an agent for the FBI. And when he worked for the FBI, he was what was known as the police liaison officer. His job was to network with various and sundry police departments in the state of Maryland and Delaware. So he dealt with small town sheriffs. He dealt with campus security at universities. He dealt with many different law enforcement people who interfaced with the FBI at various times. His job was to build and maintain rapport with those people throughout the state of Maryland and Delaware. Well, he liked his job very much. He got out. He got to meet a lot of nice people, some of whom became good friends of his. But he really ran into a hard rock at the end, if you will. He had a boss who he really didn't like very much. And normally my father didn't complain about his boss, but this time he really had a hard time dealing with this boss. And I said, why don't you like this guy? And he said to me a word that I'm not going to repeat. And I said, yeah, I think you meet people like that in many, many walks of life. I'm sorry this is happening to you. Well, anyway, he dealt with this guy for quite some time, for several years, if you will. And then eventually my father retired. And the boss, who he didn't like very much, retired. And then one night when my father was home in retirement, the phone rang. It was the boss, the ex-boss, who called, even though my father was retired, and even though the boss was retired, the boss called. He needed to speak to my father immediately. What's the problem? My father said. His daughter ran away. The only child in the family. The boss, his wife, they were beside themselves. They didn't know where this girl was. They called many people. They couldn't find anything out about her. They went to my father. So my father, okay, sit tight. I'll be right over. So he sat down for a while and came home late that night, spoke to the boss. They did what they could to try to track this girl down. They couldn't find her. So the next night, my father and my mother both went over to the boss and his wife, and again tried to figure out where this girl might be. Phone calls. This was back before the internet, many years before. They couldn't find her. So for several nights, my dad went back with my mother to this man and his wife to console them, to try to bring them some peace of mind and to assure them that based on what they knew about this girl, they felt that she wasn't in any danger, but it was worrisome that she was away. Finally, the phone rang, and the girl was in San Francisco Bay Area, where she had grown up. She was very, very, very homesick for that area and couldn't wait to go back. So she just took off and went and lived with a family that she had known there, and where she lived for an indefinite period of time. One could say she left home to go home. Well, everybody was very, very happy to know that she was safe, that she was living in a good place. Yet the anxiety that this man, my father's boss, and his wife went through was unbelievable. And my parents too were a little bit upset about it as well, because they knew this girl to be a very nice, talented, charming girl, and the fact that she was missing caused them no little amount of concern. So I just began to think that my dad wasn't in the rank and file of the office where he worked, but I think he was like some other people I've known in my life. He was in the inner sanctum, if you will. He knew the way things worked, and he was a go-to man if you needed something. And I believe that's why the boss called him, because throughout their association together, the boss went to my father to want to know what was going on. And my father knew because he was there in the guts of the system. So I think that it's often good to keep in mind that wherever we go in life, there are people who are on the flow chart who have responsibility and jobs of perhaps status and prestige. But there are also people who don't have those lofty titles, but who are perhaps more knowledgeable about what goes on in the organization than one might think. I think my dad played that role very well. In fact, I know he played that role very well. And I was very surprised to learn that my dad and this boss really had a very warm bond between them I didn't know existed. My dad was not a bitter, angry man, but I never heard him say anything good about this guy. But when he finally went and helped him with my mother and helped the wife, that warm bond they actually did have bubbled to the surface and stayed there for quite some time until they both passed away. So next time you're in the hospital, next time you're in any organization, don't discount the importance of people who maybe don't have authority and prestige and power on paper, but in reality, they probably do. Ask questions. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jamie. And so true. So very, very true. All right. Our next storyteller is our very own Mary Grace Ketner, who happens to be our brand new secretary for SASA this year. We are elated, and she will be sharing a story next. How about a hand for Mary Grace?
Thank you, Sue. When my mother was living with ovarian cancer, I would drive up to Kerrville to see her, to visit with her, to help my father take care of her. But often when I was there, I would be thinking about how I should be in San Antonio with my own husband, taking care of my own kids. But then when I was in San Antonio, I would be thinking about how I should be in Kerrville, visiting with my mother and helping my father. So when I found this story in a book called Charms and Changelings by Ruth Manning Sanders, I knew there was a time and a place when it should be true. And the time was once upon a time, and the place was in China. There lived in a great house a wealthy man named Chang and his beautiful daughter, Qian Nang. Also living with them is Chang's accountant, for he was a very successful businessman, and he relied upon his on the flow chart, I guess, Jamie, accountant. So what might have happened did happen. Qian Nang and the accountant, Wang Chao, fell in love. And when Chang saw this happening, he was distressed. He called Wang Chao to him and he said, I know that you love my daughter, and so you must want what is best for her. So let me tell you, I have found what is best for her. I'm going to marry her to a wealthy man, and she will never lack for anything her heart desires. And I think it would be better if you just left. And Chang gave Wang Chao a little boat. When Qian Nang heard what her father had done, she shouted, You have ruined my life. And she ran up the stairs to her room and flung herself on the bed and cried. Well, that night, Wang Chao pulled his little boat to the shore and made himself a pallet, but he couldn't sleep. He looked up at the stars, thinking about the life that might have been his if only he had been allowed to marry Qian Nang. And then he heard footsteps. It was Qian Nang. She ran into his arms and she said, Wang Chao, I love only you. I will marry only you. Please take me with you. Well, what could he do? He helped her into the boat and he placed the pallet over her, covered her up and hid her, and set sail that very night for Nanking. There, they were married and they lived happily. They never required much wealth, but they never lacked for anything they really needed. And then one day, after about 5 years, Qian Nang said to Wang Chao, let us go back to my father's house and see if he has forgiven us. Perhaps we could be reconciled and live as one happy family again. Wang Chao agreed, and that very night they set sail back up the river. Well, as they approached Chang's great house, Wang Chao said, if your father is angry, it is I on whom he should take out his anger. Let me go first, and if he is glad to see us, I will come and get you. Qian Nang agreed, and they pulled up to the shore beside Chang's great house. Wang Chao got out of the boat, wondering what would happen as he walked up to knock on that great door. But he didn't even get the chance. Chang was working in his garden. And when he saw Wang Chao, he ran over to him and embraced him. And he said, how does it go with you all these years, my friend? It goes well with me, said Wang Chao, and with my wife also. Your wife? Said Chang. Then you are married? Why, yes, the first thing we did when we got to Nanking, we got married, and Qian Nang is in the boat. She'll be so happy to see you. I'll go and get her. Now, when Chang heard this, he thought, oh, my poor nephew. I don't know who it is to whom he is married, but it is not Qian Nang. She is up in her bed crying. She's been grieving since he left these 5 years ago. Oh, this poor man, he's lost his mind. And thinking this, Chang spoke to him gently as to an invalid. He said, Qian Nang is in her room. She has not left there for 5 years. She will be so happy to see you. I will send the servants up to get her bed and carry it down. When Wang Chao heard this, he thought, oh, my poor father-in-law. I don't know who is up in the bed, but it's not Xianeng. She's in the boat and has been with me these 5 years. Oh, poor man, he's lost his mind. And thinking this, he spoke to him gently, as to an invalid. He said, Xianeng is in the boat. She will be so happy to see you. I will go and get her. And he did. And Chang sent the servants. And when they arrived, they found not a sick and grieving girl, but a beautiful girl standing before the mirror, combing her hair. She pushed past them and ran down the stairs out into the garden and into Qianeng coming up from the boat. They melted into each other like 2 drops of water. Where there were 2 Qianengs, there was now but one. Now, the wise men of China debated for many centuries over which was the real Qianeng and which was the changeling. But I think that those men, wise as they were, did not know, as Qianeng and I know, the need to be in 2 places at the same time.
That was excellent. Oh my goodness. Our electricity just went out. So I've got my phone light showing. So I know this looks very odd. I'm so sorry, but I'm using my phone battery right now. Oh my goodness. That was brilliant. Thank goodness I've heard you tell that beautiful story. I hope everyone got an opportunity to really listen. Just brilliantly told. Thank you so much. Let's see, we've got just 2 minutes, and Nathan, we love your stories and we love you, but I don't think we're going to have time for you to share tonight. I do want you to be the very first one to tell for the month of March. Are you good with that, Nathan? Let's see. I'm trying to find Nathan. Nathan, you're muted, but
Okay,
Sorry,
here I
was
am.
Tech control.
Here I am. I guess I'm okay with that.
I'm so sorry. We only have 1 minute left, but I wanted to say thank you to each and every person. There's some really cool things going on. The most important one that I'd love for you all to know about is the Tejas Storytelling Festival will be coming up March the 9th, 10th, and 11th. 12th, I believe. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Just go to tejasstorytelling.com to find out more information. We like to apologize. We've never had any folks come onto our stage before and bomb us with very inappropriate language. From now on, I believe our board will probably have to set new standards. We will be sending the link out to you rather than posting it on social media. So we've had a great 3 years of doing it our way, but things change. And we love and adore each and every one of you and do want you to come on back. And we will make sure that this is a safe place to be. I would love for you all to show your hands for John Hale and Karen Archer for keeping us safe tonight. That was pretty horrific, and they did an outstanding job. And I'd also like for you to show hands for our fabulous tellers who did not miss a beat with their phenomenal storytelling tonight. And I'd like to also thank our brand new SASA board. Thank you so much. We're going to have a fabulous 2023 year. I just know it. And I hope to see you all again in March. And y'all are welcome to unmute And I'll be here as long as my hand will last holding my phone. So Nathan, just to find out, what story we're going to tell so we can look forward to it next month.
Oh, I was gonna tell a classic, a folk American love story that's
Oh.
been, may have heard before, about a girl who can't decide which person she wants to marry, and one of the guys outwits the other guy by riding on his back.
I love it. About how many minutes is it, Nathan?
About 3 or 4 minutes.
You got,
Oh, darn it.
you should have.
Okay, well, we will try that out the very first week of March, I promise.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you
All
for letting
right.
me come. I really appreciated it. I have been really bombed badly once in Massachusetts, and you know what they're doing is they send a password code also for you to type in. So this way, only those with the code gets the link and gets in.
Thank you for telling us. That will probably have to, I hate to do this, but this is probably going to have to be
Pretty
the
much
way.
everyone's doing that now. I mean, I've been in all different places where this has happened, and when they switch over to the passcode that they send you they know you, they don't get it bombed anymore.
I get it.
Our guild does that. The West Virginia Guild does that.
Yeah, a lot. Well,
Yeah.
most of the East Coast does that too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll probably be joining that club now. So that sounds great. Too bad we have to do that, but thank you all. Loved your stories. Thank you, storytellers, and thank you, story listeners. And
Thank you for having us.
you bet.
Sorry, I coughed during my story. I'm really embarrassed.
Yeah.
about that.
Don't
So-
be. We're
So
Right
stay
now.
warm and have